think Neuralink is like the coolest of Elon's companies. Just my own personal opinion, because what Tesla's doing is obviously fantastic, clearly was needed, and yeah, I just think it's great that they exist, and a huge fan of what they're doing. SpaceX, I buy into what Elon's saying, that we need to make life multiplanetary. I'm just not, I don't get as excited as a lot of people do about going to space. It's just,
Okay.
I don't know why. Boring company, the traffic thing, like studying civil engineering, yeah, it is just killer to me that traffic still exists in the form that it does. But Neuralink, like just the depth of impact for any one person, where it could really decrease the effects of dementia, or provide mobility to a paralyzed patient, like that's so significant. And so I want to have like the world know that Neuralink exists and be aware of what they're doing. So I thought, well, if I create this like just Neuropod alone, there's only so many people that are going to be willing to watch those episodes. Like it's pretty dry. And sometimes I try to not make it that dry, but it's frankly difficult.
Yeah.
So the Neuropod Tune and Neuroverse series is to just raise as much awareness as possible. Like obviously on YouTube, the upper ceiling for how many people are willing to watch a cartoon series, particularly if it's about Neuralink, especially if it's about Elon Musk, is in the millions rather than in the tens of thousands, right, or hundreds of thousands. So, and then I guess the next extension of that is the shortest form videos have an upper ceiling of tens of millions. And so if we're able to do that well and drive awareness to like the core channel, that's huge.
Okay. So let's talk about Elon's coolest companies. I think we'll leave PayPal out of the discussion.
Okay.
I do get the SpaceX mission. I do think that the SpaceX mission is amazing. I think SpaceX and Neuralink are both the most exciting. I think Tesla and Boring Company are the least exciting from an intellectual perspective. They're great. I'm excited about them. I think Tesla bot actually might change the game for Tesla. Like, you know, Boring Company and Tesla primarily are just transportation and electricity, right? Which are kind of mundane ultimately. And I do think that, like, I have this crazy perspective. I think Boring Company might end up being the most valuable of Elon's companies, simply because of the number of tunnels that could be created and the value generation of each tunnel. And also the thing about Boring Company that's distinctive from the other three is Boring Company, I'll say it this way, it's not rocket science and it's not brain surgery, right? It's relatively easy from a technological perspective. I don't think they're pushing technological limits in the same way that landing orbital rocket boosters or landing second stage orbital rockets is, or, you know, curing brain diseases. Even like the battery technology and full self-driving are much more challenging than just digging tunnels more efficiently. Just doesn't seem, I'm sure there's technological challenges they're dealing with, but it doesn't seem like they've already got a solution without having to do much more, right? They're already better than any alternative by far where they are now. So, but I just think ultimately I could see easily, like, have you heard me talk about the boring bearing?
No.
Okay, so if you could imagine running 4 tunnels from, let's say, San Diego up the west coast of the United States, through Canada, through Alaska, under the Bering Strait, and down to Shanghai, and, you know, ultimately have a spur that goes along the Arctic Circle over to Northern Europe, and, you know, something that goes beyond Shanghai to India and Southeast Asia, whatever. So the 4 tunnels, 2 of them are Hyperloop and 2 of them are cargo. And you've basically replaced, because you're reaching Europe and because you're reaching India and because you're reaching all of North and South America through these tunnel systems, you've effectively eliminated all trans-Pacific and all transatlantic air and cargo travel. You've taken it all from ships that spew nasty fumes into the air to clean underground trains that are much more reliable as well. And, you know, roughly 6,000 miles of tunnel would cost, from LA to Shanghai would cost about $100 billion at $4 million a mile for 4 tunnels, 6,000. It works out to about $100 billion. And the value generation of that $100 billion, even if it costs 10 times as much, even if it costs $1 trillion, the value generation of those tunnels is off the charts. If you think about the volume of traffic, just think about, like, instead of flying to Shanghai on a regular plane and it's like a 14-hour flight, at 500 miles an hour, now you're doing 1,000 miles an hour in the tunnel. And it's not as far as you think. You think about it on a Mercator projection, and going up some Bering Strait and coming back down seems far. But when you actually map it out, it ends up not being that much further than flying across the Pacific the way we fly. You follow me?
Okay.
So it's just one application, right? You also have the tunnels within cities. Anyway, so I think that's ultimately mundane. It's just making transportation better, lower cost, more efficient, more environmentally sound and all that. But with Neuralink changes the human condition, right? It changes what we are. You could see it getting to the point where you can upload your consciousness to the cloud, where you could download your consciousness to multiple bots. Like, there's all these, like, really way out science fiction applications that you see. Have you read Ian Banks' Culture series?
No,
that's supposedly one of Elon's favorite series of novels. Neural lace. The Neuralink is very clearly connected to neural lace, which is in some of those novels. And you can, like, save state, right? If you're about to do some really like dangerous mission, you just save state, and then you reconstitute your consciousness in something else if you died in whatever adventure you were going on, right? Or you could imagine Tesla bots with human consciousnesses that they get shut down, right? They go into hibernation, and you send them to another star system. And when the ship reaches the next star system, instead of having to carry humans and maintaining life support on this long journey, you have bots with human consciousness in them. That's some really out there science fiction stuff, right? But that's pretty amazing potential. Did you ever see the Amazon Prime series Upload?
No, I haven't.
It's really dumb, but it has that concept of uploading your consciousness to the cloud.
Okay.
It's a really dumb series overall, right? Because the guy's in some resort, but he didn't pay for the upgrade, so he keeps getting ads for Taco Bell.
Oh my gosh.
Right?
Oh gosh. Okay.
So I tend to agree with you that Neuralink is the most mind-blowing, literally, where it can go. It's not just helping blind people see and helping paralyzed people walk, but it's literally helping human consciousness go beyond the human body, and also helping us keep up with AI.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I guess to go back to like what you were talking about with Boring Company.
Yeah.
It's like the idea that what they're doing is simple and therefore it's going to be more valuable. I think that's I don't buy that.
No. So here, let me be clear about that. It's going to be more valuable because of the size of the system that we'll ultimately create, but it's also it's more likely to succeed, right? We don't know if we can actually build a working colony on Mars, right? We don't know if that will, like, here's an example. We talked about the problem of birth rates. Can humans actually carry a child to term? Can humans actually conceive and carry a child to term healthy at 0.38 Gs? There's never been an experiment at 0.38 Gs. We've done experiments in microgravity with a very limited extent, and they haven't been that promising. We haven't tried it on the moon at 0.1 Gs. We don't know whether humans can actually reproduce in 0.38. There may be some stage in the reproductive process, in the gestation or whatever, where the fetus doesn't form correctly unless you're at 1 G, right? So that may never work, right? It may be that we don't really become a multi-planet species because of something like that. You look at Neuralink, like, you and I are both excited about the prospect of Neuralink, but we don't really know how well it's going to work. I think you and I are both pretty confident it is going to work, right? But it's not guaranteed, right? There's a significant chance it won't be able to achieve all that you and I hope, right?
It's true. Yeah. I mean, even in the latest update, or in the latest episode with Russell Brand, like I mentioned that, yeah, it's not, the future is not certain. And so, like, I'm giving them a lot of credit for things that are not guaranteed.
But we know tunnels work. right? There's no question that
Yeah.
tunnels work. And you can imagine, like, let's say you've got to, like in Miami, they're talking about replacing the Brickell Bridge, right?
Okay.
And it's an absolute no-brainer to replace it with a boring. They were going to replace it with $1 billion tunnel. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
And Elon heard about it. He said to the Miami mayor on Twitter, I could do that for 30 million. And
Yeah.
maybe it'll end up being 50 million.
Sure.
But you can imagine if you had to replace some big bridge and it was going to be $1 billion project. And then Elon comes along and says, I could do that for 1/10 of the cost. And you and I know it's true.
Yeah.
You're never going to, like, once the Boring Company establishes itself as a viable entity, like, no one's ever going to replace a bridge again with a bridge. They're going to replace it with a tunnel. Like, everything's going to be tunnels. It's not going to make sense to do these monster projects. It may even become effectively cheaper to do a tunnel rather than a road, because the cost of the land and the impact on the land of the road, depending on where the road is, like if it's in a city, the land is so valuable that it makes more sense to do a tunnel underneath. You know, between cities, okay, it becomes a little bit more challenging, right? But within cities, it's just like a no-brainer that the tunnels are going to be so much more efficient in so many different ways than roads. And so I see the Las Vegas project. You're familiar with the Las Vegas, not just the convention center, but the Vegas Loop, right? I could easily see that. Right now it's a 29-mile, I think it's a 29-mile plan, but you could easily see that getting to 100 miles for Las Vegas, right?
Okay.
There's about 1,000 cities in the world that are in the ballpark of Las Vegas's size. So if you have 100 miles of tunnel in 1,000 cities, you've got 100,000 miles of tunnel. How many miles do they have now? 2. That's a 50,000x from where they are now. It's already a multi-billion-dollar company. 50,000x times 2 billion is a very, very large. That's a $100 trillion company, and that's excluding intercity tunnels. That's excluding the boring the Bering Strait. Right? There's tremendous potential for that to be just a total game changer, even though it's literally boring.
Yeah. No, I mean, I do think it has great potential. I think it's still underrated in how much potential it has, just for even amongst like Tesla fans. But if we're ever gonna do, we should do that episode where it's like you, me, and some other folks comparing like potential future valuations for each of Elon's core companies. I just don't foresee a way, even if Boring Company got into the business of building double-decker highways, I don't see a way for them to, and selling bricks, selling bricks, and gosh, just
okay, the bricks. So here's the thing: the bricks are a distraction. Here's the simple business model, which I think they're already doing in Fort Lauderdale. Okay, because the Fort Lauderdale mayor said that there was not going to be paid. There were no taxpayer dollars going into building the Boring Loop. Okay. The simple business model is the Boring Company builds the tunnel system, gets the revenue, and gives a revenue share to the city. So the Boring Company finances its own tunnel, which doesn't actually cost it that much. It delivers rides at, let's say, $2 a mile, right? And it gives the city 10%. So you're a city politician, and these guys come along and say, we're going to solve your traffic problem, and we're going to pay you money. It's not going to cost you anything, and we're going to give you an endless revenue stream. And suppose you're the mayor who says no. You're in Cleveland, right? And you say no, and then Cincinnati does it, right? And all the voters visit Cincinnati and say, wow, this is a totally awesome system. Why don't we have this? Oh, our mayor said no. How long are you in your job? Right? If Cincinnati got it before you did, and you could see that San Francisco and Oakland or Portland or whatever, you could see the cities that adopt it early are going to have a huge lead over the cities that don't. And once the voters, like, because this is why Vegas is so important, by the way. And I think Orlando will be, I think it's going to happen in Orlando too. Vegas and Orlando are convention centers.
Yeah.
Right. If you deliver, like, how many people travel to Orlando and Vegas? Right. It's huge volume. So all these people from all over the country are going to see this system and say, why don't we have this in our city? Right. This is amazing. It's going to be amazing. Like, if people don't realize how amazing this is going to be, you have all these morons who are saying, oh, what if there's a fire in the tunnel? Like there were no tunnels in humanity before the Boring Company tunnel system in Las Vegas, you know, like it never occurred to anybody that we might actually have a solution to this problem in advance. It's just like, we know tunnels work. It's obvious. and once the larger Vegas loop is up and running, the volume of people who are going to see that and say, holy shit, we need this, is going to be huge.
Yeah, I mean, even just CES, like the Consumer Electronics Show, like that alone, just the number of volume. I mean, gosh, I wish I knew the number, but like the number of people,
tens of thousands of people, maybe 100,000 or more. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, just like maybe they don't like, they know that Elon Musk exists, but they don't know that the Boring Company exists, and they're like, what's this? So it's like they just realize, oh, this thing is happening and it's amazing. And like you were saying, even if they just tell other people in their city, they don't even have to tell their mayors. Like, it's just word of mouth.
I just checked 45,000 attendees in person.
Okay, yeah. And they're all the techie people.
From 119 countries.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think the potential is huge. It's just with Neuralink, like, I'm just envisioning like even just like if you could take out Dojo from Tesla, and you have a very mature Dojo, how much does that company get valued at?
It might be $1 trillion company itself.
Okay, so now say that Neuralink is doing, like, I don't claim to know all this ins and outs of Dojo, but like imagine Neuralink has all the brain data of like all these people that they've had implants in.
Oh, Dojo will be used to train Neuralink chips to read the mind and to send signals into the brain. Something like Dojo will be used to make Neuralink work better.
Well, so yeah, okay. So let's say that you have all this brain data, and that data is feeding a neural network that's being like a neural network is being trained via all this data. And then you can basically architect an artificial brain.
That's another way of looking at it. Yeah.
Then like you create this artificial brain and you pair that with a Tesla bot, or you put that in somebody who has a bad brain and you replace it with that, then it's like, how much does that cost? Like that is like
that's another angle. Yeah, my take on this was really simple. Was suppose you get to the point where you can just enhance human abilities by a little bit. Like let's say you can replace an iPhone with a Neuralink. Okay. Right? It's significantly better than an iPhone, and you don't have to hold it in your hands anymore. It's just in your mind, and you can work with it in your mind. I think you and I both agree that's coming. That's 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road, but that's coming.
Yeah.
The total addressable market for that is everyone. Like all of humanity will want that. So you have potentially 8 million customers, or 8 to 10 billion customers. And then how often do people upgrade their iPhone? Right? Every 3 years, 4 years. So, some people every year. Well, if you have 10 billion customers who are paying $10,000 a piece, and every 3 years they upgrade, that market's pretty damn big. That it's really hard to wrap your head around how big that number. And let's say, okay, it's not 8 billion people; it's only 1 billion people.
Okay.
1 billion people. Let's say they only spend $1,000. It's still $1 trillion a year, and it's still $1 trillion in revenue. And if they upgrade everything, and of course, it's really $10,000. The value of this is off the charts.
Yeah.
So you could see $10 trillion in revenue every 3 years. The valuation of that company is off the charts. And I didn't even think about your idea of, well, what if we use the knowledge to create artificial brains, and then initially we create an artificial brain that's as good as a human, and then the next year it's better, and then the next year it's better.
Yeah.
And then we have the problem of, are we a threat or are we a pet?
No, yeah. I mean, I just very much like believe that the reason humans are so well architected is because we've had so many reiteration cycles through evolution over time.
Yeah.
And so it's just like, so basically, if we were able to make that reiteration cycle faster, then we would have we would have better humans. And so basically, if they can do that with a brain and reiterate on the brain extremely quickly, then yeah, it's exactly what you're saying. We're going to have superhuman brains. And and there's like so many things that Neuralink can do too. Just advanced prosthetics alone. Imagine you have like an entirely replaced shoulder, upper arm, and then you have a Neuralink forearm, or a Neuralink wrist and hand. And you like combine all those together, and they integrate seamlessly all with each other. You all of a sudden start creating like a Tesla bot, but it's Neuralink, and you have like all these haptic feedback sensors that can sense touch, and you have cameras and hardware, and then they could get into like really advanced medical robots and just nanoscale robotics of any sort. It's like, yeah, it's just remarkable how much they could get into.